Welcome to Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, a podcast telling the stories of founders, investors and operators working to turn the world we live in into a better place. Tim Bishop, man with a van, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bill.
Cool, good stuff. Hey, super excited to hear about your journey and where it all came from and where it's all heading and so forth. Before we do, coming to you live from Nigeria, Walo every week prepares a song for our guests. So for those listening, it'll be funny because you can't see Walo when he's with his lightsaber sitting in the darkness in his blackout in Nigeria. But Walo, mate, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I wore the mask to match the Star Wars mood. I hope your Star Wars fan. So have you been sung to before?
Who, me?
Yeah, have you ever been sung to before by anyone?
Sung to? Oh,
yeah.
Not by someone with a lightsaber. Using the force.
Yeah, the force of music. Love that. Okay, I'm about to take you to Kylo Ren and his whole family. So yeah, let's
stretch out with your feelings, Wallo. Stretch out with your feelings and feel the force flowing through you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll ask Celeste to please play some music for us. Very spacey. When you got to move, well, you got to move. Can you feel the weight? When you got to move. When you got to move, do you got the moves? Can you feel the weight? When you got to move. Call the man with the back, call the man with the back, call the man with the back, call the man with the back. Just go Tim Bishop, just call him Tim Bishop, just call him Tim Bishop, just call him Tim Bishop, just call him. When you got to move. When you got to move, when you got to move, call the man with the back, 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 call it. Yeah.
Nice one, brother.
And then the lights came on for you, so you must be a star. You must be a star.
Single-handedly brought the power back to Nigeria.
Yeah.
Oh yeah! Wow.
The whole of Nigeria.
That's how powerful the force was. Good stuff.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey Tim. So as I said earlier, thanks for joining us. I think. Would love to hear your story, but obviously every good story has a long backstory. So, tell us a little bit about your, where you came from, your upbringing, how you became, who you are today, I guess.
Sure. All right. Well, I grew up in England, in the UK, in a little village. Came to Australia when I was 10 years old with my family, and they moved over to help sort of small business that my Australian family here on my mum's side had. They're all my parents on both sides, small business people from forever, as far as I know. And yes, they came over to help with a struggling business in the Australian recession in the 90s. It's a chocolate retailer in Melbourne. So lots of chocolates growing up, which was great, amazing.
High dentist bills.
Yeah, exactly. But basically they were working all the time. We were raised by babysitters, which, pros and cons to that, but very much a strong work ethic. My mum in particular is very much always about branding. And the way she sort of saved this business is by going from a chocolate retail that mostly sold imported chocolates of all different brands to creating a brand and just sell, and then buying chocolates and rebranding them under that brand. So and that by creating that brand, she was able to create value. It wasn't just another retailer, because at that point supermarkets were starting to sell things like Lindt and Ferrero Rochers and things like that, and those international brands. Anyway, I grew up in that sort of world where it was about pleasing customers, branding, all that sort of thing. But I was terrible at school. Came to Australia, didn't really fit into the culture at first. Went through 5 schools in 6 years, and then dropped out without finishing school. So, sort of year 11. And went kind of on the road, traveling around, doing whatever, being a little rat bag.
Good.
Yeah. Actually,
I did very similar things.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so, doing different, and sort of setting up odd businesses along the way, like selling sushi at markets or doing different things like that. But I was out protesting outside uranium mines, became a bit of an activist, protesting outside uranium mines in Central Australia, and came back to Melbourne, having done a bit of traveling doing that, and started studying renewable energy technology. I started getting a real interest in, well, if we're protesting against this uranium, what is the alternative? And started studying that, and that's when I bought a shitty old van to get work as a courier, just around doing that TAFE course. So I hadn't finished school, so I couldn't study at university, but I was doing a TAFE course in renewable energy technology. And bought this old van and went to some courier companies around Melbourne, trying to get a bit of sort of flexible work around study as a courier. And they said to me, "Oh, look, your van's over 10 years old and is therefore considered too unreliable. We can't give you anything." And so I just started putting up those, the posters with the pull tags with a phone number.
Oh, yeah. I never actually knew if they worked or not. I always thought, wow, what's the ROI on these bad boys? Because, I still see them though, right?
Yeah,
you still see them around.
Exactly. Yeah, early noughties, and so it was just then around, getting coffee shops to allow me to put them up and putting them in laundrettes, and anywhere I could put them, I would stick them. So I just flyering everywhere. And it was a terrible looking van. But I applied, I had no uniform and I really had no branding except for a business card, which funnily enough, the actual logo has stayed the same all that time. Because I had a friend who made the logo for me in a big share house I was living in, and he made it for me. He was doing graphic design at the time, and he said, "Look, go down to 7-Eleven, get me a sausage roll and a Slurpee, and I'll make you a logo." And he just mucked around with some Bauhaus and created a logo, but it's quite striking. He now just he's the creative director of some high-end fashion magazine, and if anyone knew, he wouldn't like anyone to know that he designed a moving company's logo, because it's the lowest of the low, and so he.
It's not on his LinkedIn profile.
I don't think so. I think he's too cool even to have a LinkedIn profile. Actually.
Yeah, right. One of those creative directors.
One of those guys. One of those guys. But yeah, I just sort of applied that customer service that had been sort of drummed into me as a kid to this business and started getting lots of referrals, lots of repeat business. This one particular storage place, there was this old Russian guy who ran it, had this overflowing ashtray whenever I go in there, and he just sat there, and really gruff, scary dude, but he liked me. And he would say to his clients at the self-storage, like, "This guy, he looks terrible. His van looks terrible, but it's very good service, very reliable." He always refer me.
That's a great Russian accent, by the way.
I was terrible, sorry.
Really reminded me of Boris Yeltsin there, yeah.
And so, it expanded organically that way. Shall I go on, or? Yeah,
no, for sure. But you've given us plenty there. It's interesting. One of the things that when you were speaking that stood out to me was how you can kind of reverse engineer some of your learnings from when you were a kid. Like how you were raised in terms of, especially the branding stuff, like what you saw your parents do and how that, because like I think you said, brand is an experience, and it's the way, I guess a brand is kind of the way an experience makes you feel a little bit as well, like how an association that you're proud of. Like is that, I guess, when you were getting off the ground with, man with the van, when it was, I guess, dodgy looking man with the van in the early days, for lack of a better, was that like core to you? Were you thinking, all right, cool, like if I can create something that's unique here, standalone, got its edge?
It's funny. I would always say I didn't have that aspiration at that time, because who aspires to be a removalist?
Yeah.
No one. So it was always just something I'm doing for now. And people would say, "Hey, this is great service, and the branding's cool. You should grow this." And I say, "Oh well, look, I can't, because the business is me.
Yeah.
I'm the business, and so how can I duplicate me?"
It's not men with vans.
Yeah, it's not men with men. There's a really good sketch in that. Then I actually I read a business book called The E-Myth.
Oh yeah.
The Entrepreneur Myth, which was quite which kind of changed things a little bit for me. It made me sort of dissect myself a little bit and realize that yes, the business is me and what I do. But you could break that down into systems. You could break everything that the way that I answer the phone, how I take bookings, etc. You could break that down into systems and replicate it and grow it. But I still wasn't that convinced. I went traveling with a mate of mine in India for a few months, doing that sort of that hippie thing, and came back. This is in the naughties it was. It's like less so such a hippie thing now, I suppose. But anyway, we came back, and I met a French girl in India, and I planned to go to live with her in Paris and try a new life, and came back and intended to sell the business. And so I ended up selling it to a friend, which is basically my mobile phone, the van, and the system of how it worked. Yeah. And on the condition that if it didn't work out in Paris, then we'd go into business together when I got back. So was in Paris for a year, didn't work out, came back, and we went into business together, and that's when we really started trying to grow it. And that is the point where we decided, okay, how can we scale this? What have we got to do to make that happen? And branding was core, but it was also about and I mean, one of the great things is most entrepreneurs pick a industry that is really exciting and fun or bleeding edge or something. I think I stumbled into an industry that was full of dinosaurs. It was completely, it's boring. It's a boring industry. There's no getting around it. And so it was kind of ripe for a new player, in a sense, to do things differently, because it was something that your parents would use. It was, the branding was terrible. The website copy of all the
least evocative thing you can think of, kind of. It reminds me of Koala Mattresses, how you talk about your brand, like the same as Koala. I think Koala did a great job turning the equally most boring thing on the planet, like a mattress, and turning it into a really warm and fuzzy and a great experience. I agree. So it was kind of, in a sense, it was low-hanging fruit. All we had to do was provide customer service, which was something that didn't seem to exist in most of that industry. It was a lot of knuckle dragging, really the sort of stuff that the sort of works that would come out would be like just customer service wasn't on the menu, right? Whereas that was number one for us. You can build muscles, but you can't build being able to be a nice person. I don't know, maybe you can, but it's a lot harder. It's easier to build muscles than to change your personality. So we hire on personality first, for example. But so it was branding and customer service, but then it's very much systems based, and we didn't have any money to start with. Everything was done, it's smell of an oily rag. Never had any investment of any sort. And so we had to keep costs down, and it meant that no offices, no receptionists, none of that stuff. And so the business system, from a technological perspective, grew from me with a paper diary and a phone to me and my business partner having two mobile phones. And we found this dodgy illegal thing that you could do. I guess I can talk about this now. It's been a long time,
where you can clone a SIM card. You could order from China a SIM card cloner, which for a range of reasons is illegal. And the network will detect a cloned SIM card. If there's two on the network at once, there's a problem. So me and my business partner each had a work phone. So if say I'm the man on the work phone, I would turn my work phone off, call him on his personal phone and go, it's your turn to be the man. He would turn his work phone off, and then we lived on other sides of Melbourne, but had the same mobile phone number and could spread the load. So then we'd have two Palm Pilots that are from, they're a million years old technology, but that would synchronize overnight with the schedule on it. So with just those bits of basic tech, we were able to not have a central location, but work as though we have a central location, and that evolved into having syncing iCal calendars and laptops in trucks, to building our first database, and now it's all about one of our biggest expenses is our database, which is all custom built because nothing existed and still doesn't really exist. That does what we need, and that's another business stream we're looking at in the future is then licensing out our intellectual property as far as our system goes and what it can do.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
it sounds really truly like the story of building something from the ground up, and getting more ambitious as you go. You know what I mean? Seeing what's on the next horizon and then kind of taking that on and moving to the next stage. Because to what you told me, initially when you had your shitty van and the Russian guy that would send you leads, to now talking about like a data set, a basic business infrastructure around, removalist and so forth that you can use as sell as a software as a service solution. Like those two things, they're universes apart. They're not miles apart. And that's a pretty cool story. It's good to see somebody kind of like, biting a little bit off and then moving on to the next thing. I think it's awesome. So you spoke about the hiring nice people, first and foremost. Obviously, customer experience and customer service and being key. For you guys, how do you think about culture and making sure that you do have the right people getting in front of your clients and getting them into man the van? How do you think about culture internally?
Okay, we think about it a lot, and it's crucial, and it's been very hard over the last couple of years because so much of our culture is based around the sort of events and things that we put on. Because if you can imagine, you've got 2 or 3 guys going out in a truck all day together, and so it's almost like they don't spend much time at the depot. You're there in the morning and you may be there at night. At the moment, you don't even come in the depot because it's COVID restrictions of all kinds, and so we relied very much on the Friday barbecue that we would have religiously every week since we started. Barbecue and beers, Saturday morning breakfast, and events because we had a lot of musicians and artists and things at Man with the Van. So we'd put on Vanapalooza, which hire a local venue and have all the bands, comedians, whatever, DJs that are on staff at that time, advertise it on community radio, open to the general public, and just that's the sort of thing that we would do to maintain the culture, because otherwise you're only seeing one person at a time. So the group, more of a sense of a group culture rather than just the two of you going out in the truck all day. And so, it's been hard over the last couple of years, but we're really keen to get some of that back. But it's the ways that we get the good people, for want of a better term, at the outset is actually I think one of the most useful tools we have, which was I discovered by mistake early on when we had first put up an employment form. So if you want to apply for a job, you fill in all your information in this form. I was getting bored with reading resume question answers, blah blah blah, and I thought, I'll put in another question to amuse myself for applicants, and it is, tell us a joke. So when you go and apply on the website, you got to tell us a joke, right? And I did that just purely to amuse myself, to have more jokes to then tell my nephews, that sort of thing. And
it's a good idea, actually.
But
I'm taking note of it.
here's the unexpected result of that. What you find is you weed out the people who will tell a sexist joke, a racist joke, a homophobic joke, any sort of bigoted joke that you might tell, and people do, that you might tell a prospective employer. They might look great in every other way on paper. They might have the experience. They might, really look good on paper. And then they tell a really shit joke. Pardon my French. And you can just, then it doesn't get to the point where they're shouting that out at a member of the public out of a truck window. And they've got the job, and we don't know this side to them. That doesn't fit in with our culture. And so it turned out to be a really useful filter, but it was put in purely for my own amusement. So that's the sort of thing. The culture's tight. So if anyone's an idiot, we hear about it. But generally it doesn't even get to that point, because there's a lot of interviewing and a lot of training beforehand. So yeah, that's how we maintain culture. We really pushed diversity as far as working with people like Yarra Youth Services and people who are asylum seekers and having trouble in the workforce as well. So because otherwise, awesome. We don't just want north side hipsters in working. I mean, so that I think makes our culture stronger, and as well, being one of the only movers that actively goes about looking for female movers, and we've had some really great ones. We're always looking for more. I think maybe like the name sometimes puts them off.
Yeah, the name definitely.
Although we do have women with the van t-shirts with a different. They're different apparel for the female men.
Yeah. You definitely. I think in removalists, and like I said, it's such a I guess old industry. I mean, it's not inherently old. It's just like it's always been around. It's just I feel like everything you're talking about, especially around diversity, inclusion, and so forth, is probably something that would stand out to a lot of people in a great way. Be that talent that want to come in and work with you, be that clients that you're dealing with on the commercial side, whatever it is, because there's just not a whole lot of people thinking about that at the moment. It's probably still stuff that's and the more people that are, then we're living in a better world. And it's a real value add, I think, from a brand perspective to hear you taking that into account, in it's kind of a little bit common in like startup land and so forth. There's definitely more of it, but I definitely think that in the industry that you're in, that would be a massive ticking the right box,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it reflects the values of the staff, the culture that exists. Do
you have travellers? Do you have transient people? Do you have transient people coming in and out and working with you from other countries and stuff on that side?
Not in the last few years, but and also we tend not, unless they're amazing, we tend not to, because we train up to a certain level, and it takes time to get really good at this job. So we don't want blow-ins because we've got to provide quality service. And so if you're someone that's only going to be with us for a few months, you'll still be breaking things by the time you leave. So we'd rather you get to the point when you're not breaking things and stick around a bit longer after that.
Mm-hmm.
Makes you more economically viable.
Definitely.
But we have had a lot of 3-year working visas. We've had people who neglected to see Australia because they just ended up loving it, working with us and sticking around and doing the Melbourne thing. Mm-hmm. And when they've done their working visa. Yeah. So we do have them occasionally. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. You definitely seem like I said, from the ground up story, I guess. So when you started to take things seriously, and obviously brought in your partner and came back from France, you said. I'm actually interested in the France story. That'd be an interesting sidetrack, actually. I'm sure there's a couple of good stories there. But when you started to take it seriously and okay, cool, this is what we want to do. We want to create an awesome brand, an awesome experience. We want to make this our living, not the way that you were just getting by as man that was the man with the van. What kind of big obstacles did you come across? Because I feel like our stories are a little similar. And I won't go massively into mine, but I'm founder of a startup, of a couple of startups now, but I had no background in corporate, no background in startups. I didn't study anything. And for me, it's all like learning by doing. And that is great because you kind of start from first principles a lot of the time. You don't go with like what the industry does or what your peers do or whatever, but it's also, it's also treading new ground a lot of time, which is really difficult. So,
yeah. Yes, I totally agree. And we've had, definitely we grew to a size that was definitely uncharted territory for anyone who I knew. As we started to grow and the speed with which we were growing, there was no one really in my circle who'd been there who I could call on. So as you said, it was very much just got to suck it and see and figure things out. So for example, I knew nothing about trademark law. Not long after we first launched our website, we discovered that we got an angry email from a guy in New South Wales who runs a business called Man and His Van, threatening to take us to court, blah, blah, blah. And so we had to, we didn't have a trademark, didn't even think of it. I didn't know anything about that stuff. And so we actually ended up by some miracle getting our trademark registered, but limited to Victoria, which he wasn't too pleased about. But that was a big learning experience of then studying stuff around trademarks. And it's a constant battle now.
Really?
And well, yes, of course, because it's a weird one. So for example, so much of a business name and a brand these days is about its appearance on Google, SEO, that sort of stuff. It's why every startup has a weird name that's never existed before.
Well, we're Athyna with a Y.
Exactly. Yeah. Case in point.
For that very reason.
And so I didn't think of that when I started Man with a Van. And when I started noticing that competitors, as we started growing, were advertising with the same name, like using Google AdWords and actually putting it in their name, I started trying to protect it and got in touch with Google, and they said, oh yes, we protect trademarks, therefore we'll remove any competitor that's using those keywords, et cetera, et cetera. And then their story changed as time went on when I guess one of the engineers realized, because these ads all kept coming up, which was contrary to their own policies. So they say they'll remove them, yeah, but they couldn't once their engineers saw that it's to do with broad matching. So this is kind of getting to the technicalities of SEO. So Man with a Van, Google sees man and van, removes the with and the up because it just seems like a query. It's like someone searching for man. I'm looking for a man and with a van. Yeah, it seems it's a very general query.
It's very generic. Yeah.
And so Google, and they're not going to change their algorithm just to enforce their policy for a removalist company in Victoria. And so
they're not going to change their algorithm for the United States Supreme Court, probably.
Exactly.
Let alone the man with the van.
And so the upshot of that is constantly trying to protect it as best we can, because it's a very grey area as to what they can. So, there's a whole lot of trademark policing we've got to do by actually contacting other companies and saying, here's the line of what you can do. That's passing off. So yeah, like you say, I learned all of this on the fly. And then from so that's sort of the web trademark legal stuff. One of the benefits actually though of being limited to being in Victoria is we were keen to expand interstate quite early, and we were growing very fast. And that stopped us from doing it because we can't trade outside of Victoria with our name. So currently we're limited to Victoria. But I think it was a good thing, because sometimes those restrictions to growth that are placed on you can be good. We weren't ready. I mean, we're ready now to expand, and we're starting to open up regional depots in Victoria, but we weren't ready then. And I've seen other competitors expand into states, and it's like an overreach. And the culture, like, apart from anything, the culture is so important, man with a van, that if we were try to grow exponentially suddenly, your culture doesn't work like that. A staff culture doesn't work like that. You can't scale it that quickly. As far as I can tell, it's got to be more of an organic growth. Otherwise, you lose something. And I only ever want to have a business that I'm proud of, and that a place where I'd like to work. I wouldn't sell it out in order to grow it 10 times as big if no one was happy there and everyone was like an Amazon employee sort of thing. That wouldn't be worth it. So we had these artificial restrictions put on us, but
it also gives you focus, right, Tim? Like it's that, not having to do not being able to jump onto the next shiny thing, the next state or territory or what have you. It gives you focus to
it's made us really entrench. And really strengthen those business systems, things like our database, but again on learning. So we're always about wanting to pay our staff correctly, and it's a very competitive industry, so we don't pay much above what you consider the award rate, but we provide other benefits. But early on, the laws around casual awards in Australia, they're quite purposefully written, I think, to be ambiguous, so that they're constantly in debate as to how they should be paid. What I mean is, so the casual award in Australia is meaning you take a base hourly rate for an industry, and you forgo your public holidays and sick leave and things for a higher rate. That's more or less equivalent to the full time, but without those benefits. Boring, complicated stuff. Whatever. Anyway, we started paying us. When we're starting out, we're like, how much do we pay our staff on, say, a Saturday for a casual rate? And we figured it out. And then one of our staff said, no, I think it should be calculated this way. And so we went, okay, we'll call up what at the time was called Wageline, the Victorian government body that tells you how much to pay your staff. Called them up, and they gave us a number. And we're like, okay, it's that. But that seems strange to us as well. So we called them again, got someone else, and they gave us another number. Called them again and another number. So the government department, whose job it is to tell you how to read these wage rates, gave us three different things. It's like,
that's not surprising at all. For some
so we
reason.
then talked to an employment lawyer, and they said, the wording's too ambiguous. I think you need to go to a barrister for this. And we went to a barrister, and the barrister said, it's ambiguous, but this is my best call on what your wages to be. And so that, talking about learning, it is just what to pay our staff was the correct rate to pay our staff was complicated. And look, another change that's happened to us that was painful at the time, but I think it's been a really good benefit and growing stage for us is some of our employees approached us who joined the Transport Workers Union, because I mean, part of the thing about hiring bright, intelligent people is they're going to have progressive and they want to be very involved. They can have progressive views and viewpoints, and they're intelligent, want to be involved. And so we were approached for what's called an enterprise bargaining agreement, an EBA negotiation, and we were quite resistant because I mean I'd never had much experience of anything like that, and we've been very, I guess that just my mindset was I don't want people coming in here and telling us how to do things. We already paid the right rates, etc. But what the union then was campaigning for some changes and some recognition of having worked longer at Man with a Van longer, so therefore a higher rate, etc. It was a painful process. We ended up, we now have an EBA, but what's come out of it is occupational health and safety committee, some key union members at Man with a Van who were sort of a connect to that can reach further into the staff body as a whole and be able to talk to people. And I think it's made us a stronger company. So these sorts of growing things that have been very much a learning experience. And I mean, and you know, it's part of the exciting journey. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, I never thought when I started moving furniture that I'm going to be negotiating an EBA, and turns out I love that. I love that sort of thing. You know, I love the tussle. It's great. You know, yeah. So that's really been a benefit.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the job of a founder, is to change hats every 3 to 6 months. You know, like maybe not every 3 months, maybe every 6 months, maybe every 12 months, but whatever it is, like, you know, most early stage founders are, you know, the head of product and the head of sales at the same time in whatever they're doing. You know what I mean? And then they move to like, all right, cool, now I can manage people and put really good people in positions, but I'm still pretty involved over here on the right, and I'm pretty involved over here on the left, but now I'm able to sit a little bit more strategically above and make decisions on strategy. And then, like, the further you kind of progress, you come up with new challenges. What does that kind of look like for you? You know, because you were the guy with the phone, and then, you know, dodgy SIM cards from China, and, you know, whatever. And then now you're talking about.
Well, we're lucky to have a really good management team. So 2 senior managers, one traditionally that we've called the senior manager men or humans, who just is you call them sort of what is it, personnel? I didn't grow up in corporate anything, so I never know the names of departments. Anyway,
call them blokes if you want.
The humans.
There's a few blokes over here, a couple of chicks over there.
Yeah, and then another senior manager who is machines and systems, because that's essentially what Man with a Van is. It's humans, machines and systems. And so these 2 senior managers very much look after those 2 departments, and then some junior managers under them who do amazing work. So we've been really lucky to have a really good crew. So there's very little day to day that I have to micromanage, but I still quite often do to the annoyance of people. But so day to day, it is, well, I mean, I guess that's the beauty of having your own business. It's a choose your own adventure. To a certain, when you're off the day, most of the day to day, you can go, where do I want to put my energy? Is it into our new depot, our satellite depots? Is it into packaging? Are we going to look at the cleaning service that we want to introduce? And it just depends on my mood. And what's been great lately is I love actually getting in the trucks and doing the work and being on and remembering what we do. You know, experiencing what it's like for a new employee now. So going out with a new employee and experiencing that. And I never, if it's a new employee who doesn't know me, I don't tell them because it'll freak them out. And I want to get
undercover boss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And particularly if it's a customer, because I don't tell the customer because I want them to give an honest appraisal of what they're experiencing. So that's a lot of fun. And because of COVID, and right now, half of our workforce, we're in one of the most difficult times ever at the moment. As is a lot of business in Australia and across the world. Half of our workforce is isolating or sick. And so we've got managers out in the trucks, and I've been out in the trucks quite a lot, and I love that. I really love it.
Getting on the tools, so to speak.
Getting on the tools,
100%.
working on some of the chocolates.
I think of that as sales with what I do, you know, like anytime I can have I get, because I'm kind of, that was one of the things I was removed from, and then when I get pulled back into it, it's a great opportunity to see where, like, our clients are at, where their heads are at, where the pitch is at, how, like, it's super beneficial and valuable to get your hands dirty.
Yes. Well, I mean, we're from on high, us in the OH&S committee and stuff, we're all, we're applying, we're writing down all these rules for COVID, you know, how to operate under COVID and contactless moves and all this sort of stuff. It's all well and good to, you know, make those rules and policies and procedures. It's great to then have to do them. and experience what it's like for actually on the road, you know, when a customer is up in your face without a mask and ignoring your COVID stuff. So it's to actually be put in that position. It helps with forming those policies, and because you understand the real challenges that the staff face on the road. But I think it's been hard for me. One of the challenges for me as far as what my job is at Man with a Van, but is people have always told me I'm ADD, right? You know, like pop psychologists, girlfriends, and actual I've always been told that, and I finally got a diagnosis actually this year.
Congratulations!
Thanks.
Confirmed.
But it made a lot of sense, and one of the challenges for me had been as the business grows is that personality type. I mean, well, that mental illness is really useful, I think, for early stage business, right? When you have to think on the fly and you're prototyping ideas and you're working 50 different things, and you are constantly shifting roles all of the time, and everything is very immediate. It's quite useful, and as the business grows, and you say you have this great new idea, now as we're the size we are, it has to pass through. Everyone's got to kind of sign off on that, and we can't just do it today. If we want to, I want the database to do this. Okay, well, we're partway through a 2-year rebuild, so we'll see that. We'll start to talk about that, and it doesn't suit the ADD brain. And so with some medication, I'm becoming better at actually my brain being more suited to this stage of the business development, where things take longer and require more attention for longer. And so I'm starting to see a little bit of an improvement there. But I really do think an ADD brain is good for at the start of a business. It's not so good for a later stage business.
Yeah, Tim, as you said, talking about growth and speaking about where Man with a Van is right now, you feel like compared to when you really wanted to grow stupendously big, you couldn't really do that and felt kind of restricted. And then now where you say you feel like the company is more ready to do that. So I've had on the podcast, we've had a couple of conversations. One in particular with Kate Save. I don't know if you know her, Be Fit Food. Anyway, she was talking about how one of the pieces of advice you give to young entrepreneurs is that they should learn to grow quickly. She didn't say that directly, but I'm paraphrasing anyway, talking about growing quickly. But then you've come today with like the exact opposite of that. Like, don't grow quickly until you're ready. So the question is, how do you know when you're ready? Because I think based on your definition and everything you've explained, a successful business is one that is always growing, I guess. You could grow vertically, like making more profits, taking over bigger markets, or grow horizontally, like a strong business, strong brand, strong culture, everything. So I feel like, do you think that when Man with a Van grew horizontally, it increased its capacity to go vertically? I don't know if people on the podcast.
Definitely. It's building the foundations to grow vertically. Yeah. You need those foundations. We had opportunities to do that meteoric growth. So there was a period when we really started, because there was a period when we started doing TV advertising, things like that, and the brand became much more. Brand awareness went up, and we were really growing fast. We were putting on more trucks and more trucks and more trucks. And we were approached at that point by various, big name investment firms in the city. You go into the city and it's the initials on the tops of the buildings. Those guys, I won't name them, but they called us in for a few meetings where they're like, we're going to franchise your business. We're going to take you international. We're going to do all these sorts of things. And I think we could have done it. I don't think I would have liked the result. Yeah. And so that was more of a choice, maybe somewhat ethical choice. I mean, I'm not saying you can't build an ethical, strong business that scales really quickly. I think it depends on the sort of business. You know, like a startup, like a web startup. Of course you can, because everything about digital is scalability.
Yeah, it's scalable.
But it's harder for us. And I didn't want to ruin the culture and ruin the product at the end of the day. And I didn't want to overcomplicate my life. So I think there's different types of entrepreneurs. I'm not completely all about business all the time, and I don't want it to totally take over my life in every way. So I think, and me and my business partner, we're not about that. So our growth now in the future it's less about fulfilling my ambitions. It's more about the ambitions of our management team, and the things that they can do with the business. I want to be a bit more. I want to share a bit more of those opportunities as we because we will go into state. It's just about the timing, and perhaps we will go international and go into different businesses. But the key to keeping me sane has been for most of the time just doing one thing well. So that is to say, I'm just going to mute my thing there. Is it dinging on your end? It's not dinging on your end. Doesn't matter.
All good on there.
Okay. Yeah, doing one thing well. So we all we provided was a man in a van for a very long time. It took us a very long time to then offer a different size van, because that complicates the business system. It took me nearly 10 years to introduce packaging and start selling that, because I didn't want to do it. And it to complicate the business to a point where we couldn't continue to scale, and where I would start to get gray hairs early. So I always liked the KISS principle, and keeping the business model very simple. So, you know, we don't move pianos, we don't move billiard tables, we don't move giant commercial blocks, because that it enables us to if you keep the business business system simple, then it's easier to scale. So that's my theory anyway. But again, this is all just from my experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, let me jump in there. I think we heard a lot about many famous companies that received like hundreds of millions of investments, and they were not able to manage their culture and grow as they wanted. So yeah, I think it really makes sense. And also, once you start like growing your own team and you start delegating on them, and you I really confident that they're going to be able to take care of the business if you need to take care of, I don't know, the growth strategy in another country or whatever. So I think it makes sense. It makes totally sense.
Yeah. Facebook is
So Tim, I know you mentioned you've got the foundation now, like you said, you've kind of built what you want in terms of like your culture, you've built the foundations around the brand, you are preparing to be ready to go, interstate, to offer these software solutions for other movers and so on and so forth. One final kind of question from my end is what does the future look like for you and Man with the Van? Where would you like to see things in 5 or 10 years? I know it's a long time, but like what's on the horizon, and what would you like to see in your future?
Love to talk about that. No, some of the biggest things are technological innovations that we've got sort of in the pipeline. There's only one human can only move a certain amount of furniture per hour, and trucks can only fit a certain amount of furniture in them. So there's very sort of hard boundaries on that until we have robot movers, and I haven't heard Elon talking about robot furniture removalists yet. So I'm not holding my breath for that one. So we're using humans.
20 Tesla bots in your van.
Yeah, there's no way of building efficiencies from that perspective. Staff are doing it as well and as good as they can and as efficiently as they can. So where do you build the other efficiencies? And one of the things is, when I started out, a person will go around to your house, take inventory of everything you have with a bit of paper and a clipboard, come back a week later and mail you a quote, right? Of course, our generation it's not a thing. You know, we want to do it all online, and we want the information now, and we want to book it in. It's done, right? We don't go to travel agents to book flight tickets anymore. We don't book flight tickets, but that's relevant. But yeah, so of course, we've always been very technology focused, and our system's been very good at doing things like estimating jobs, to the point where it can now estimate, if given the right information, to about a 95% accuracy within 15 minutes of how long that job's going to take. So our current database rebuild will allow for real online bookings that are accurate. As far as we know, no one in the world has done this with furniture moving. That is, you give an inventory, you give information about the addresses and the buyer addresses you might be going to, and when you want to do it, ideally, and it will estimate all of the travel times using things like Google traffic data that is analyzing different times of day and look at what we've already got booked in, and find somewhere that, and the right vehicle, right time that suits both us and you. So you can do it all online, lay down your credit card, book it in, and no human in an office has to vet that. It is just booked, and we know that it's, so that's there. So we're very close to that being a reality. We're hoping that with this year, so you know, that'd be a key thing, because people, you want to, you know, these days you want to be able to go online, do something, press done, forget about it, and it's booked in, rather than have someone call you back and go over a few details, and no one's got the time for that. So that's the technological innovation that will help reduce the pressure on our office team. So all the queries they're answering are real customer service ones, rather than just the dog's body work of booking in jobs. They're talking about the finer details with customers that want to. And so it takes the pressure off the office team. And then the holy grail beyond that is Google's image search API that allows, so you might have seen some little demos of it. You wave your phone around a room and it starts identifying things. So the holy grail for us is because that's the annoying thing about putting, you know, there's no quick and easy way for a customer to input everything that they've got. You know, we try to make the UI as clean as possible, but more and more people are doing it on their phones, and it's a very small space to put in detailed information, which is, you know, moving house is an incredibly detailed thing. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be estimated. So the holy grail is you walk around your house waving your phone around, it takes inventory, estimates volume of everything, and you're just going yep, and confirming what those things are, and that's how you book in a move. You're not that's sort of the next thing we'd like to add. So these are the ways we're aiming to keep ahead of the competition in the long term. And of course, those platforms then we're designing them. I mean, there's no web app that we're paying a licensing fee to do, you know, apart from things like a Google image search or a map search, that are someone else's proprietary IP. It's our proprietary IP that we're getting built for us, so that we can then go on and sell that to a competitor. Well, potentially not a competitor. Sell it overseas, for example, where we're not in that market. So that's the sort of longer term stuff, and expand physically our reach around Victoria, and hopefully in 5 years, I would expect that we'd be, I think, in Sydney first, which then allows us, which would then allow us to expand into interstate, potentially rail connections. People that are moving interstate, if we've got a hub in each city, then we can become more of an all-purpose transport system. And also the obvious sort of add-on services that we'd like to add are things like packing services, cleaning services, those auxiliary things around moving. So all those things we want to explore. Yeah.
And hopefully like launching in Argentina. We need a man in a band in Argentina.
I would love to launch in BA.
What do you call a van in Spanish? Hombre con un what?
Hombre con una van.
There you go.
It's also a band. So.
There you go. You've got your first franchise opportunity there, Tim.
Yeah. But I mean, in BA, I mean, what are the tricky thing in BA? Is there a minimum wage in BA? I mean, who are you competing against? If we went there,
yeah. To be honest, the last time I moved from like my apartment, for example, like you ask all of your friends, hey, do you have like any contact referral? You have to call.
Men with vans.
I was going to say, oh, we'd be too expensive in BA, but no, that's not true. There's heaps of money over there. There's some people with some serious money over there, just not everyone.
Well, and I would say that I never heard any company providing this service in this way with this tech stack, this experience. So I think in Argentina, everyone will get their mind blown. So it will be amazing.
Well, I know you probably got one to quickly finish us and wrap us up for the day. I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, I have my rapid fire questions for you, Tim. What is the number one tool you cannot live without?
Number one tool I cannot live without.
I hope it's not a tough one.
I don't want to say my phone because you immediately think your phone, and that's terrible.
Yeah, someone said phone. Michael Barker said phone. Someone said breakfast.
Okay. Number one tool I can't live without. Sense of humor. That's cool. Everything is easy to overcome if you can make light of the situation. That's number one.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Nice. And then, what is your favorite book right now?
Favorite book. Favorite book I've enjoyed most lately is *Sapiens*.
Yeah. I think we got that from Omar Mullah. Really cool. Okay. And then, any advice for young entrepreneurs trying to navigate the world of like new ideas, like Man with the Van, unexplored ideas? Yeah.
What advice I would give to a young entrepreneur? Do one thing really, really well. Don't try to be everything to everyone, or try to do 100 different things. Do one thing well. I think that there's another thing that I often tell people. And spend at least 1 day a week working on the business, not in the business. Everyone knows that one, but it's a good reminder. Just on the business, and make it like a religious holiday for work where you can't do any day-to-day stuff. That would be my advice.
Love that.
That's great.
Thank you. Straight back to Doc to round us up. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's pretty much it from our end, Tim. So awesome to chat. Everybody loves a good founder story. I'm sure you didn't know you were starting a business when you started the business, and now you're talking about global API infrastructure to it's a phenomenal story. So really appreciate you coming on to share it. Thanks to Lucas for jumping in on this one. Thanks, Walo, as always. And that's pretty much, that's it from us.
Pleasure. Thanks heaps for having me. A lot of fun. Really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Unreal. Cheers, Tim.
It's a
That's
pleasure.
a wrap.